We tend to think of finance as a hard science, a world of spreadsheets, algorithms, and strict mathematical formulas, where the smartest, most highly educated people naturally accrue the most wealth. Richard Viscone fit that mold perfectly. He was a Harvard-educated finance executive with a wildly successful career, an MBA, and a massive 18,000-square-foot mansion in Connecticut. But when the 2008 financial crisis hit, his heavy borrowing and illiquid assets left him completely bankrupt. Compare him to Ronald Read. Read fixed cars at a gas station and swept floors as a janitor. He lived in a modest two-bedroom house and chopped firewood for his main hobby. Yet when he died in 2014, he left behind an $8 million fortune, built simply by saving what he could and quietly investing in blue-chip stocks. Or consider a brilliant technology executive who patented a key Wi-Fi component in his 20s. He was a certified genius, but he would literally skip $1,000 gold coins into the Pacific Ocean with his friends just for fun. He went broke shortly after. Financial success functions as a soft skill, where behavioral discipline matters far more than technical IQ. This is why an untrained amateur can routinely outperform a highly trained expert in the money game, something that never happens in fields like medicine or engineering. We watch people do bizarre things with their money and assume they have no idea what they're doing. But every financial decision a person makes is justified by the tiny, localized fraction of history they have personally experienced. This graph compares stock market returns experienced during the young adult years of two different generations. If born in 1950, the market went nowhere during your 20s. But if born in 1970, the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold during that exact same stage. Those two groups are hardwired with entirely different risk tolerances. A choice that looks reckless to the person who grew up in a stagnant market often looks like common sense to the person who watched stocks constantly multiply. Bill Gates attended one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer in 1968. Out of roughly 303 million high school-aged kids globally, Gates had the 1 in a million head start that came from attending Lakeside School. But he wasn't alone. His best friend, Kent Evans, shared the exact same drive and business mindset. They planned to conquer the world together. Instead, Kent experienced a 1 in a million risk, dying in a high school mountaineering accident before graduation. We observe extreme outcomes, attribute wealth to sheer effort, and poverty to bad decisions. In doing so, we entirely ignore the silent, opposing forces of luck and risk that dictate so much of our lives. Judging anyone's financial success, including your own, is deeply flawed unless you recognize these external forces. The reality is, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. This blind spot regarding our own success gets highly destructive when raw ambition is left unchecked. We routinely see individuals who already possess elite wealth risk absolutely everything to commit fraud. Rajat Gupta was a highly respected CEO and board member worth an estimated $100 million. But he sat in rooms with billionaires. To elevate his status into that final circle, he illegally traded on inside information during the 2008 crisis and ultimately went to prison. Bernie Madoff ran a highly profitable, perfectly legal market-making firm that made him legitimately wealthy. But his insatiable appetite for more led him to orchestrate the most notorious Ponzi scheme in history. The core psychological trap is that modern capitalism constantly pushes the goalpost upward. It excels at generating both wealth and envy. When you constantly compare yourself to the person one rung higher, the ceiling is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it. The only way to survive the wealth game is to establish a firm sense of enough. You must refuse to risk the invaluable things you need, like freedom and reputation, for excess money you don't. Our brains struggle with exponential compounding because we think linearly. Consider the Earth's ice ages. The planet froze because of moderately cool summers. When snow from one year never melts, it forms a base for the next winter's accumulation, eventually reflecting enough sunlight to drive the Earth into a deep freeze. This same logic explains Warren Buffett. His total net worth is roughly $84.5 billion. but $81.5 billion of that was accumulated after he turned 65 years old. Compare Buffett to hedge fund manager Jim Simons. Simons has superior annual returns, 66% compared to Buffett's 22%. But Simons has significantly less total wealth because he found his investment stride at age 50, giving him decades less time to compound. Because our brains think linearly, we drastically underestimate exponential math. We constantly look for massive forces to explain massive results, and we ignore the simple, counterintuitive power of just waiting. Technical financial knowledge, complex spreadsheets, and hot stock tips offer very little value if you lack the psychological fortitude to manage your own ego. The actual framework for acquiring and keeping wealth requires stepping back. You have to recognize how your specific generation biased your worldview, cap your social comparisons to find what is truly enough, and give immense grace to the quiet, powerful forces of luck and risk. But perhaps the most difficult requirement of all is resisting the urge to constantly tinker. You have to let the boring, repetitive magic of time do the heavy lifting. Ultimately, the wealth game rewards survival and behavioral consistency over raw intelligence. Winning with money is a test of character, not a test of math.